Lincoln-Reagan Award. That award, we just started it last year. Our committee got together and decided we wanted to find a way to honor those who have been very instrumental in this county, in supporting our parties. And last year, our recipients were Dan and Lisa Garrett. Really been very committed to the party, to the community. And this year, we have another recipient who also has given a lot to the community. And I'd like to have Isabella Solis come up and present the award.
All right, New Mexicans, are y'all having a good time or what? Hey, listen, we gotta be a little bit better than that. You know, we're still in the land of the free. We still have privilege. And we should be thankful for it. So come on, aren't you glad we're in America? Land of the free, home of the brave, and I'm thankful for it. And we're still fighting for it. So listen, let me tell you, comfortable people cannot change history. You're here because you're not comfortable in the way things look, the way our state looks, and the way this nation looks. So we want to make some changes. So thank God for all those candidates that are running for office, and we need to do something about Sleepy Joe. How about that? I think we need to be able to make some changes there if everybody gets out and vote. And we call the American church to come out and vote. We need to vote this year. It is a matter of life and death. It really is. We're in a critical time in history. So I just want to encourage you tonight. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting this organization. I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Anna, for this privilege. So tonight, this organization wants to recognize men and women in our nation. Doña County Republican Party honors Tom and Doreen Hutchinson. Something about when you get, over 40 like me, you need glasses. So we want to honor Tom and Doreen Hutchinson. It says, Tom and Doreen Hutchinson, unwavering support and dedication to our community are truly inspiring. Their substantial contributions through building, restoration, and leadership efforts have made a lasting impact and transformed our communities. We are deeply grateful for their work. Tom, come on up. Y'all give him a hand. Congratulations, Tom. Please let Doreen know. Thank you. All right. Thank y'all so much, and God bless y'all. Henry, did you take my picture or what? Tom, we'll take a picture later, okay?
Again, I just want to thank you all for being here this evening. In your program, there's a brief bio of our speaker this evening, but I just want to share a little more about him with you. When the governor shut down California during COVID, he defied the orders and kept his church open, even though he was being fined $3,000 a week. He fought the county, and they eventually removed the fines. He went on to help other churches and several small business owners in their plights to keep their churches and businesses open during the shutdown. Not only has he fought for churches and small businesses, but he has also brought speakers to his church to shed light about things concerning our country that many of us are unaware of, some terrifying. He's done that by bringing speakers to his church, such as James O'Keefe, who has investigated and exposed corruption in corporate America, one of those corporations being Pfizer. Victor Marks, whose mission is to help women and children that are involved in trafficking. He has also hosted events for Riley Gaines and helped her with her campaign against trans women. And Chloe Cole, who has detransitioned and now advocates against the practice of transitioning minors. He's very involved with Charlie Kirk, the Turning Point Foundation. He co-founded Turning Point Faith with Charlie. And he is also very involved in Turning Point USA's America Fest each December. This man is a fighter and a strong advocate for God, the Constitution, and for our freedom. I want to briefly share with you how he came to be here tonight. About 3.5 years ago, as you recall, the vast majority of businesses and churches were shut down due to COVID. In California, however, strip clubs were open. Well, my daughter was watching Sean Kennedy, and he had a segment on about a pastor in California that turned his church into a temporary strip club. He did that by walking up to the pulpit. He removed his tie, threw it out to the congregation. I'm still getting my glasses. So he then told them that since he had removed an article of clothing, they now qualified as a strip club and could remain open. He also mentioned that Mike Huckabee told him if he got arrested, he would bail him out. As my daughter watched, she was asking, who is this guy? And she immediately searched for information about him. It turned out the church he was at was only 25 minutes away from where she lived. After watching him a couple of times, she decided to attend his church. Come on. She was having some challenges at the time, life challenges at the time, and let me tell you, this man has been a godsend to our family. Thanks to Pastor Rob and Pastor Tony of Godspeak Calvary Church. I'm thrilled that he accepted my invitation to come and speak to us tonight. So will you help me join and welcome Pastor Rob McCoy.
I was telling Anna, I'm a trailer behind an RV. I'm going where I'm towed. She told me to, yes, no, I need. And she said, when I give you the cue, bring up Micah. Okay. So that was fun. Thank you. Sorry about the food. Did you get it back? All right. Well, it's an honor to be with you. I bring greetings from the People's Republic of California, with Governor Mussolini. I was the former mayor of the city of Thousand Oaks. I've been a council member, so for all of you running for office, I've run for office. I ran for the state assembly, won the primary, lost the general, won election as a councilman, one re-election, so I'm 3 for 4, so that's a good batting average. So, precincts, oftentimes you get good legislators that are bad candidates. Which means, yeah, you guys would be great legislators, but you don't do the work to get elected.
Preach it.
You got to walk precincts, make phone calls, raise money. It's exhausting. And I used to tell people, you know, it's not my campaign, it's yours. I'm willing to have my name on the stickers and have my car keyed, my windows broken, and the death threats, but it's our campaign. And it's a representative form of government, and you represent by investing in the candidates that you want to represent your sovereignty as we the people. And the way that you speak with that freedom of speech is by hosting coffees, fundraisers, walking precincts, and donating. My wife and I commit every election cycle not only a tithe to our church, but a tithe to candidates. 10% of our income goes to candidates running for office. And for those of you who are going to come up to me that are candidates saying, well, can I get a... First of all, we start local. I'm inspiring the people in the room to help you, to back off. Listen, Dr. Benjamin Rush, one of our founders, when they asked him to put in order the most important things in his life, he said, God, my government, and my family. They said, Dr. Rush, how can you put government over your family? He says, because if the government's bad, I won't have a family.
That's right. That's right.
They will destroy it. And if you doubt that, just come to the People's Republic of California, where they're taking the children from the parents to put them through mutilation. That it's not transgenderism. You put two biological males and two biological females on an island, and you come back in 100 years and repopulate. You put two biological males and two biological males that have had transgender surgery and come back to that island in 100 years, it'll be a pile of bones. They're lying. Riley Gaines, and you know, we want to talk about women's rights. Where are the adults in the room? They are obliterating women's sports. I was a college athlete. Riley Gaines had to dress with a man who was a pathetic swimmer in the NC2A and couldn't compete as a male. So he stole femininity, and we're allowing that. Chloe Cole had a double mastectomy at 15, sanctioned by the state. In 20 years, if we don't do something, those kids are going to look back and ask us, where were you?
Come on, that's right.
And you say, well, why are you starting out so harsh? Because it's if I'm not mistaken, the Reagan-Lincoln Dinner.
That's right.
Let me give you a quote by Ronald Reagan, who I had the privilege to meet when I was 9 years old. He rubbed my head, signed his autograph, best wishes, Robert McCoy, Ronald Reagan. What he didn't realize back then was that he was endorsing me today. Ronald Reagan wrote, without God, there's no virtue, because there's no prompting of the conscience. Without God, there's a coarsening of the society. Without God, the republic cannot long endure. Now I say that because the challenge in the Republican Party, which I've been a member of the Republican Party my entire adult life. I was a Republican before I was a Christian, before I was a husband, before I was a father. My mother made me walk precincts when I was young. She was president of Republican Women. My dad ran for city council twice. My dad had 3 tours of Vietnam, Navy captain. We weren't church goers. I don't remember ever praying in my family or reading the Bible. But I remember my mom saying, the 2 things you don't speak of in mixed company is religion and politics. I'm the guy you don't invite to the dinner party. That's all I talk about. For Christians, which is sickening, they think politics is dirty. And polis, where we get the word politics. Aristotle said it's the highest form of community. It combines morality with sociability. If God didn't intend us to be in politics, he would have never invented marriage. That should be a louder amen. You don't have rules, you're in trouble. Hold this. It's called the affairs of the city. Jesus was asked, what's the greatest commandment? He said, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law of the prophets.
That's right.
Love your neighbor as yourself. I was brought before the judge on contempt charges. Every time we had the doors of the church open, it was $3,000. We did our midweek. We had 3 Sunday morning, 1 Saturday night. We were racking up fines, $500,000. Judge brought me in on contempt charges. And he turned to my counselor and he said, Counselor, could you remind your client of the second great commandment? I'm like, I got the judge quoting scripture. I go, Judge, I don't need my counselor. I can answer that. You're asking me if I love my neighbor. Yes, Judge, I do. I love the 65% of the small businesses that will never reopen in our county because of your draconian order. I love the elderly who've had to die alone because of this stupidity. I love the abused who've been quarantined with their abusers. I love the children whose schools have been shuttered. They have a 0.0002% chance of death. Yes, I love them. And for loving them, you are fining me $3,000 every time we open the doors of the church. The church, might I add, that is the bride of Christ, that our governor said is non-essential. The governor has a lot of authority, but he doesn't have that kind of authority.
Come on.
You tell me my wife of 34 years, Michelle, is non-essential. I don't care how big you are. You'll be picking up your teeth with your broken arm. Shepherds, pastors. The bride of Christ was declared non-essential. My friend Charlie Kirk made the worst prediction in radio history when he said the churches are going to take this city down. They are going to rebel. It was an awful prediction. The church bowed to tyranny, and they quoted Romans 13. Romans 13. Pastor, you're not submitting to authority. I'm sorry, what?
What authority?
Have you never heard of Jonathan Mayhew, the father of the War of Independence? Jonathan Mayhew, an Eastern Seaboard preacher that John Adams said was responsible for the War of Independence? Jonathan Mayhew, who exegeted Romans 13 because they kept quoting it. By the way, it was the most often quoted verse in Nazi Germany to silence the church against Hitler. All they say is God appoints opposition to authority or to submit to that authority. But they leave out this part. They're there for our good. And Jonathan Mayhew said, if they're not doing good, they're not the authority. And you say you disagree with me on that because you've done a little bit of Bible study. So you're telling me that the Bible says, wives, submit to your husbands as unto the Lord, and he's beating you? Are you staying? Is that unlimited submission to tyranny? Children, obey your parents. It'll go well with you. You'll live long on the earth. And they're abusing you and molesting you? Is that unlimited submission? Then why would the church fold? And why does the Republican Party run from social issues? All we're doing is getting gray and old. And the young people are looking at us for leadership. The largest conservative youth movement in America is Turning Point. The kids love what we're doing. And yet all of our candidates want to run from the social issues and abandon the platform of life and marriage. As though somehow it's toxic and we're trying to get along in a world that wants nothing to do with morality. They're mutilating our children. And you call that health care? This is dystopian. And maybe it's not what you came to hear, and I may not to be invited back, but that's okay. Stick around, I'll defend all of you. This is my party. I'm in California. I'm a California condor. I'm an endangered species. I'm a conservative in California. And I've watched all the Republicans leave. They're leaving. And guess what? There's not going to be anywhere else to go.
That's right.
Congressman McClintock said, what can cause someone to leave the beauty of California? I've done it. You can surf in the morning, snow ski in the afternoon, and dirt bike ride in the desert at sunset. I've done it. That's amazing. All in one state. He said, what can cause people to leave the beauty of California for the deserts of Nevada and the wastelands of Texas? He said, one thing. Bad government. You see, politics is critical. And that's exactly where pastors and churches need to be. Do you know who the first Speaker of the House was in America? Muhlenberg. He was a Lutheran minister. His brother said, you don't mix politics and religion, until they burned his brother's church down. And then his brother went on to become a senator. Most of the signers of the Declaration of Independence had the equivalents of seminary degrees. And no, they weren't deists. Whatever garbage you're reading, put it down. Go to the original sources. And the amazing thing about all of this is in the 6,000 years of recorded history, a nation, come 2026, will have celebrated 250 years of existence under one article of incorporation. We're the oldest nation on the face of the earth under one birth certificate, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator, with certain inalienable rights, among those being life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. What eloquent words. In the 6,000 years of recorded history, the first government built from the bottom up. It wasn't an oligarchy, meaning the few rule the many. They decided to do something where the many would be represented. It would be a bottom-up form of government. They searched the scriptures in ancient forms of government. Benjamin Franklin so eloquently pointed in his prayer. When he called for 3 days of fasting and prayer, you can see it in your program. And when they came back in the Constitution Convention after loggerheads, they came back after 3 days of fasting and prayer, they came up with one of the most intriguing forms of government, a bicameral legislature. And based on Isaiah 44:22, the king is the Lord is our king, our lawgiver, and our judge, they came up with the three branches of government: executive, legislative, and judicial. But they looked at the legislative branch, and the preamble of the Constitution was where they began. We the people. They declared who the sovereign was in America. We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, do ordain and establish this Constitution. They went on to declare the 7 articles of the Constitution. It started with the Bill of Rights. Go on to have 27 amendments. By the way, if you're running for office and you seek my endorsement, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. Name for me, by memory, the 10 Commandments. Second, I want to know the 7 articles of the Constitution. Just give me the titles. Third, I'm going to ask you how many amendments there are. There's 27. Hard to give you the answers tonight. But here's the interesting thing about that. Our founders came up with a bicameral legislature because of representation. A republic. It wasn't a democracy. And the only branch of that government we were allowed to elect was the lower house. Those Congress members would then appoint the 2 senators from each state for the upper house. The president would be elected by the Electoral College, which is a representation of the congressional representation of the people. And then the president would appoint the judiciary. It was a fascinating approach. And they wanted greater representation, and the slave states wanted to count their slaves for population, but they wouldn't allow them to be citizens. And they had a sunset clause on slavery. They inherited slavery, and they were the only Western nation to put in there a sunset clause to abolish it. We lose 650,000 men and women on the field of battle. As I'll invoke shortly, Lincoln. And as they set up this 3-branch of government with the bicameral legislature, they decided that the most powerful branch, the lower house, the Congress, that would be duly elected by the people, would be given the greatest power. They'd be in charge of the money. And then they wrote the very first amendment. The eloquence of the Declaration of Independence is a work of antiquity, never to be equaled. Even the preamble of the Constitution is beautiful. But the First Amendment is angry and prohibitive. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof. No government will ever, hear me, no government will ever get in the way of man freely worshiping God. Period. John Adams was right, only immoral people can govern a republic. Is everybody okay? Is somebody dying? Only immoral people can govern a republic. Immoral people. Why do I ask candidates to recite the 10 Commandments? You had 3 to 5 million people enslaved in Egypt crying out to God for deliverance. God sent an 80-year-old man by the name of Moses. You got anybody else? And Moses confronts Pharaoh and says, "Let my people go." God says, "Let my people go." Pharaoh says, as all tyrants do, "Who is God that I should obey him?" Let me tell you what I'm going to do, old man. I'm going to double their brick output and reduce their materials. Let's see how that's going to serve you. And these 3 to 5 million people who wanted freedom were now under a heavier yoke of bondage. And you know what they did? They didn't want to kill Pharaoh. They wanted to kill Moses. People want freedom, they just don't want to have to suffer for it.
That's right.
So one man in God constitutes a majority, because God alone constitutes a majority.
That's right.
That's why Lincoln said, "My concern is not whether God is on our side. My greatest concern is to be on God's side. For God is always right. Unless our goals and our positions are grounded in Scripture, we cannot reasonably expect the Lord to fight for us." Moses knew in whom he believed. And when Pharaoh took him on, God brought the plagues. So devastating, the final one, the angel of death, would pass over. The firstborn would die in the homes that weren't covered in the blood of the Lamb. Pharaoh lost his boy. He relented and let the Israelites go. As they were leaving with all the wealth of the Egyptians, Pharaoh realized he was losing his slave economy. He sent his entire military after them. The entire Egyptian army behind them, mountains on either side of them, and the Red Sea in front of them. They get to the Red Sea, and all the Jews begin to lament again. You see, only 1 in 9 Americans fought in the Revolutionary War. I hear people, I'm in California, hear it all the time. We can't win here. It's such hard ground. I'm so sick of that. Hard ground. Anything worth taking is hard ground. Welcome to the fight. Dig harder. Well, we've already tried that. Try something else. Edison screwed up over 1,000 times. They estimate between 1,000 and 2,000 times in attempting to make the light bulb. You know what he said? I didn't fail to make a light bulb 1,000 times. I learned how not to make a light bulb 1,000 different ways. It's optimism. You're making it the Reagan Dinner. Reagan was the eternal optimist. He's the one who said that the two boys, the pessimist and the optimist, were both put in separate rooms, and the pessimist was put in a room full of brand new toys, and the optimist boy was put in a room full of manure. And they came back and they saw the pessimist boy with all the toys crying. And they said, "What's wrong?" He said, "I can't play with them because I'm afraid I'm going to break them." And they went into the other room, the kid's in the manure, he's laughing, he's digging. They go, why are you so happy? He says, with this much manure, there's got to be a pony in here somewhere. We're the party of optimism. Just because that's the way we've always done it doesn't mean that's the way we need to keep doing it. If it's not working, quit acclimating to the opposition and hoping they're going to give you an ever-decreasing piece of their pie. You don't need to be like them. The party was birthed in 1854 by a handful of men and women who were abolitionists in Ripon, Wisconsin. When Lincoln was elected, 6 of the 10 southern states seceded from the Union before he was ever inaugurated. He was despised. He was so hated, calling for more conscriptions, that the North wanted nothing to do with him. And McClellan was beloved because he was willing to seal the border and allow the South to negotiations. And for anyone who says it wasn't about slavery, read the secession documents of every southern state. Wherever you got that, it's called revisionist history, and you're wrong. It was all about slavery. It was a moral issue. It was the #1 issue of the time. And the party was founded on that. And he stood his ground. And as I said earlier, 650,000 soldiers died on the field of battle. The only time the South ever invaded the North was the Battle of Gettysburg, July 1st to the 3rd of 1863. And it was a bloodbath. Pickets charged. Bodies were piled high. November 19th, 1863, they need to dedicate a battlefield at Gettysburg. The rains had been torrential and the stench was vile. Corpses were protruding through the softened earth of the rain-soaked fields. The smell of rotting flesh permeated all the nostrils, and the women had handkerchiefs over their noses with perfume to alleviate the stench. They didn't even want Lincoln to speak. They were so disgusted with him. They brought a bloviating minister by the name of Edward Everett, who went on for almost 2 hours. Lincoln got up and spoke for 4.5 minutes, so quickly they couldn't even take a picture of him. 77 years ago, our forefathers brought forth on this nation a new continent, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. We're gathered here on a great battlefield. And it goes on to say that that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, would long endure. It defined the purpose of the war. His gift of the English language and the spoken word was to the point where every faith wanted to say that Lincoln was affiliated with him. Lincoln was no evangelical Christian. He'd never been baptized publicly nor publicly professed faith in Christ. No president has ever quoted more scripture in context than Abraham Lincoln. When human value is grounded in accidental properties like skin color or intellect, it is not only the victim class that is dehumanized, but all human beings, since no one shares these properties equally. Applied to the issue of abortion, the pro-choice movement believes that the entire class of unborn human beings can be set aside for slaughter. Why? Because according to the pro-choice movement, unborn children lack certain value-giving properties, such as size, level of development, or independency. Size. It's too small to be human. So you're telling me that little Micah here is less human than you because he's smaller? You can divide over the melanin content or the size of a human being? Well, it's its level of development. Oh, So an infant is less valuable than a fully grown adult? It's its environment. It's in the womb of its mother. So you're telling me I'm less valuable here in New Mexico than I am in California? It's its degree of dependency. It's dependent on the mother to live. So you're telling me anyone in the room who's dependent on oxygen or insulin is less valuable? You have no argument. It can't be anything else but a human being. Yes, it's a difficult topic to defend. But that doesn't mean we don't defend it. But what about the cases of rape or incest? Have you met my granddaughter, whose biological mother is now sound and healthy as a result of giving birth to the child that was conceived by rape? And pick my daughter and my son-in-law to raise her little girl? It's cathartic. And less than 1% of abortions are by rape or incest. Yet we've conceded all the ground. A woman's right to choose. What about the woman in the womb? Oh, here's one. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. Yet when Roe v. Wade was passed, all those churches that had black tiles didn't say anything about Roe v. Wade because it wasn't socially acceptable. 3 to 4% of America's population, which is black ovulating females, are responsible for 40% of the abortions in America. It is a holocaust on the black community. You tell me Black Lives Matter? Margaret Sanger was a eugenicist who said we needed to get rid of the Negro problem.
Yes.
And all of the abortion clinics are in inner cities. You have a melanin content, she doesn't want you around. You're an undesirable. That's not what the Republican Party stands for. You see, morality is critical. When Moses watched the Red Sea part and the people were delivered and they ended up in the wilderness, and manna was provided every morning for food, and water came where there wasn't. Their shoes didn't wear out for 40 years. Their clothes didn't wear out for 40 years. Miracle after miracle. But here's the greatest miracle of all. Greatest miracle of all. Moses goes up on Mount Sinai, and he gets a downloaded moral app called the Decalogue that is on the edifice of our Supreme Court buildings. It used to be on the edifice of every building in America. But now we want to defranchise from our Creator. It's listed in our birth certificate. And what was that Decalogue? One God. Everybody put up a finger. One God. Do this and bend the second one. No idols, don't bow down. 3, put your hand over your mouth. Don't take the name of the Lord your God in vain. 4, make a pillow. Honor the Sabbath day. Rest. 5, salute. Honor your mother and father. It'll go well with you. You'll live long on the earth. 6, don't murder. 7, don't commit adultery. There's 2 in a marriage, not 5. 8, without thumbs, don't steal or we'll cut them off. 9, it's 5, not 4, 4, not 5. Don't bear false witness. And 10, don't covet. Why am I teaching you this? Because for almost 220 years in America, I was instructed to all of our children and our grandchildren. They went out with the moral law dictating how they lived. And from the moral law would come civil law.
Yes.
And in the stairwell of Harvard University Law School is the plaque of commencement, which I think was 1911, that has been invoked every year to the graduates of Harvard Law School. The law is the wise restraints that make men free. How do restraints make you free? You apply restraints towards evil in order to pursue excellence. Any athlete in the room understands this. While your classmates are out partying Friday night, you're in bed early getting ready for practice in the morning because you're going to stand on the block. You're applying restraints to those things that easily beset you so that you can achieve excellence. Any parent understands this when raising kids, when they want to play Nintendo or whatever Xbox is and eat candy all night, and you say, turn it off, do your homework, because freedom is having choices. And we want you to have freedom. You have choices because you've studied and you have the ability to do a multitude of things. You're applying restraints towards those things that will enslave you in order to pursue excellence. And that's the moral law being applied to civil law. But you remove the moral law, and the civil law is no longer the wise restraints that make you free. The civil law now becomes a weapon to enslave mankind. You're non-essential. Who are you to tell me my business is not essential? The big box stores are. You take the jab or you don't work. Look, your authority ends where my skin begins. Back off, Fauci.
Yes.
And think about this. I got to wrap it up.
Great.
Thank you. There's one of you. I appreciate it. Think about this. We are in the most trying time of the Republic's history. If we don't win this election, if we don't take the House and the Senate and the executive branch of government, we won't see 250 years. We are on the abyss of tyranny. They're enslaving the opposition. They're arresting them. We walked away from anyone affiliated with January 6th. We don't even defend them. We don't want to talk about them. Grandmothers. My good friend, Mark Ibrahim, decorated combat veteran, scheduled to be a CIA ground operator, leaving in 4 days for Langley, Virginia. A decorated DEA agent shows up to support his country on January 6th, never steps foot in the Capitol. His brother's an FBI agent. As a DEA agent, well trained on the range, he trained every FBI agent that was undercover there that day. Nothing ever happened to him until he went on Tucker and said, "No, there were FBI agents there. My brother was there, and all the guys that I trained, they were all undercover." The next day, he was facing 16 years in prison, was put in the jail in D.C. that had been condemned, by the way, and they reopened. Who does that? Try to raise money for a January 6th defendant. We've been doing it at our church. We've defended 7 of them. Oh, that's not what we do. They're guilty. Guilty of what? Well, they killed people. The only person killed was actually Babbitt. Shot blindsided by a Capitol police officer. America's on the precipice. And I share this because we need to return to God.
Amen.
I say this because my mom and dad were good people. They didn't take us to church, but they had morality. But more than morality, my folks had character. You see, I think it was Edmund Burke who said, all that's necessary for evil to prosper is for good men and women to do nothing, or moral men and women to do nothing. Morality is not doing what's wrong. So you don't drink, smoke, or chew, or hang around with those who do. You don't do what's wrong. Character's different. Character's doing what's right. So if your child comes home from school and says, "Mommy, Daddy, all the kids in the school called Susie fat, but I didn't," you'd say, "Well, that's the moral thing to do, child. Well, where's your character?" What do you mean? Why didn't you tell the other children to stop it?
Yes.
Well, they all would have laughed at me. Look, I'm not in charge of the consequences. I'm in charge of doing what's right. I'm in charge of obedience to God. I defied the governor because he didn't have the right to say the church was non-essential. He didn't have the right to shut down my neighbor's businesses. He didn't have the right to shut our children's schools.
Come on, come on.
And no one's going to change unless someone stands up and says this is wrong. But the reason why we don't do it is because we're moral, but we don't have character. We're afraid. We're afraid of the consequences of telling the truth. That's why the Republican Party has morphed into purple. We're acclimating. We put our finger in the air and see which way the wind's blowing. We need a party of character.
Yes. Yes.
We need to do what's right. This is the critical moment. You see, it wasn't Hitler and his victims. It was Hitler and an entire nation that was complicit in lying to each other, to their neighbors, their friends, their co-workers, their enemies, because they were too afraid of the consequences of telling the truth. So what? The night that I decided to defy the restraining order, I had the worst pain in my shoulder. I couldn't even move. I haven't experienced anything like that. I was catching a flight from Sacramento down to Thousand Oaks because I had to be there for Saturday to meet with the elders. And the pain was immense, and I left my family up north because we were getting death threats. And I called the attorney, and I said, I know you can't counsel me to break the law, but if I do, what are the consequences? There was a page and a half on a legal document of all the consequences on legal pad. My son would lose his NRTC scholarship, we'd lose our house, we'd lose the church, we'd face jail time, we'd be bankrupt. He went through the whole list. They were frightening. And the pain was getting worse, and the intensity and the immenseness. And I said, let me call you back. And I called my wife. I was scared. And by the way, we're all scared. In the absence of courage, truth is an orphan. Courage is just doing the right thing even though you're scared. And I called her. And I said, I don't want to do this without you. I can't. But I don't think I could live with myself if I didn't. But here's what we could possibly lose. And I read everything on that list, and I could hear the silence, the heaviness in her heart. I'll never forget what she said. She invoked Wormern's wife's quote. She said, Rob, I'd rather be a widow than be married to a coward. My kids were thrilled because we were fighting for their generation. They're looking for leadership.
Yeah. It's true.
My staff had been with me all those years, and they knew what we were going to do. But I had to meet with the elders, and there was 15 of them. Try getting 15 elders in agreement on anything. Saturday night, I sat them all around the table. I said, fellas, I'm planning on defying the restraining order tomorrow, but I'll only do it with a unanimous decision. And if the decision isn't unanimous tonight, I still love you. I disagree with you. And in front of you is my letter of resignation. And they all agreed. And then I called the landlord, a West Texas man, who loves the Lord, salty. He went from a bricklayer to a billionaire, dropped out of high school at 15, a great American story. I said, Dan, they can take your building, all the assets. And he said, Rob, we gave that to the Lord a long time ago. Go kick their ass. What is the future of your children, your grandchildren awarded to you?
Life. Preach it.
I mean, is this an exercise of futility where you raise a few bucks and feel good about yourself because we had a nice dinner tonight, or are we going to take back the state of New Mexico? If you're not enthusiastic enthusiastic about it, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah.
Go to a TED Talk. This is Gideon's army. And if a handful of people could have started this party in 1854 to stop slavery, and they did, and they removed slavery from the warp and the woof of the fabric of this nation, why can't you take back New Mexico?
Come on.
I've watched so many people leave California, and I'm like, good riddance. The only people we want left here now is backbone, and all glory's going to God. And by the way, you know why we retained the House in the midterms? Because New York and California outperformed. In our purple district, actually blue, we got a Congress member elected. We're tired of listening to all the naysayers in the party with all, well, we can't do this, and we can't do that, and we tried this, and there's nobody wants to blah, blah, blah. And they do ballot harvesting. Go, what do you know about harvesting? No, I don't know about harvesting, but they do it. So you know what we did? We figured out about harvesting.
Yeah.
We did it.
Yeah. That's right.
We did it at the church.
That's right.
They said the churches will never allow ballot. Yeah, they did. They were thrilled. We don't trust anyone, but we trust the church. And we held those ballots back until they figured out they had their count, and we moved them in. Boom, 30 days. We played their game and we beat them at their game. I'll close with this last story. It's my godfather. He's gone to be with the Lord. He died at 100 years of age. I'm named after him. His name was Rear Admiral Robert Broussard Early. Graduating class 1937, Naval Academy. He was the highest ranking survivor of the attack on Pearl Harbor at 99 years young. At 99 years of age, he still drove a car. Not well, but he drove. He did 100 sit-ups a day in increments, and he said movement is life. Amazing man. I had won the primary. No, let me correct that. I was in the middle of the primary, running for state assembly. I'd been a Republican my entire adult life, as I said earlier. I was the last Republican candidate remaining, and 2 days before they closed the filing period, the Republican Party brought in a 27-year-old Hispanic, nice guy, Mario de la Piedra. We're friends to this day, but they brought him in because they said a white evangelical minister couldn't win in plus 21 Democrat Oxnard. And in the primary, my party gave him $1 million. That's dirty cool. I beat him like a renegade. But in the midst of it, they were attacking me, they were attacking my church, they were attacking our school. Not only were they attacking my own party was carpet bombing. They did opposition research, came up, it was the most, I found out things about myself I didn't even know. And this was my own party. I was so disillusioned in my first run for office, so sickened by this, that I had to get out of town. I was out of money. I couldn't contend. I couldn't respond to their hit pieces. So I went to go visit my godfather. My mother died of lung cancer. My father was at home with Alzheimer's. He was the patriarch for all intents and purposes. I went to go visit him because I wasn't going to make his 100th birthday, so I was going to go wish him an early happy birthday. And he was living in the same house he lived in all 50 years of my life. And I come in, and he has me sit down. He says, "How's it going?" He had a voice that commanded a room. "How's it going?" I said, "Uncle Bob, I feel like I've led these folks on a rosy road to nowhere. I'm out of money. I'm getting carpet bombed by my own party. California's going to hell in a handbag." I'm just whining. He puts his hand up. I've never heard him angry in my entire life. He puts his hand up, it's shaking with age. He puts it up, he goes, "Stop it!" Paralyzed me. Nothing but like being spanked by a 99-year-old man. He looked at me. He said, "You don't know tough." I was 16 years old in the Great Depression. We didn't know where our next meal was going to come from. Had it not been an appointment to the Naval Academy, I would have never received a college degree. And you being a history major don't realize we had the 22nd largest army on the face of the earth. And I was stationed in Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. They sank my ship, the USS Cassin. The harbor was on fire. My shipmates were dead in the water. The next day we took on a two-fronted war against two fascist nations. We lifted that fleet from the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, brought both of those fascist nations to their knees and established republics in both Germany and Japan. And we floated that fleet into Tokyo Harbor to accept the surrender of the Japanese. And when we came back, we cut federal spending by 50% and had the largest industrial revolution in our lifetime. Now quit your whining and go finish what you started. That is the spirit of the party for the Republicans here in New Mexico. Line it up.
Are you guys fired up? Yeah. Okay, I want you to get out there, get the vote, get your neighbors, get your family out there, let's vote. And as Pastor Rob said, let's turn New Mexico red. A couple of things as we close. There are little bags at your table. If you'd like